Hey, welcome back to the Field of Faith podcast. I'm Chris, and with me, as always,
What's up, Luke D?
and today we actually have one of our best friends on, which we are super excited about. We have a brand new author with us, coming in to speak. I know it's like a weird thing.
Yeah.
You've come a long way. I mean, we've known each other since like the dog days when you were just a little old youth pastor.
Yeah.
And
Back
now,
in 2005.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
no, earlier than that.
Yeah, we met before that. That's
Yeah.
true. But got to be friends in around 2005.
Yeah, when you came back from your hiatus in
The Carolinas.
Carolinas.
Yeah.
So we have Mr. Justin Hege with us. Now, what do we call you now?
Man, I think Justin's good. Yeah, you can call me Justin. Or you can call me, hey, buddy. That's fine. That's what I usually call you guys when I reach out.
Yeah,
You do. Yeah.
that's pretty much about it. And then he has been working on for almost a year now, or has it been longer?
Well, less than that, I'd say right around March of last year. So, yeah, almost there. March, April of last year, kind of something came to me, and I mean, kind of refining it and going through the process of, writing a book, writing a book, and with the intent, to travel, to speak, and to be part of life for men, really.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. That's why I should be on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Field in Faith is for men.
Yeah, this is all about men and the stuff that we deal with as men and the crap that we go through. And what you're actually writing about is 100% what a lot of people are dealing with. And obviously, your book title is...
The book title is Stop Sucking at Marriage. So it's pretty upfront right there. It's something that I'm super passionate about. It's something that I've been passionate about, as I pastored for all those years. There was this common thread within relationships that no matter, it almost superseded. I could see, some of the men and women for that matter in life who had amazing walks with the Lord, but just simply couldn't put it together when it came to unity and harmony and fun and excitement within their homes. And it was a tough thing. So for me, I've always been passionate about it because I really do believe if you were to look at like the scope of a Christian walk or a man's walk, where the enemy is always going to come after is that quintessential relationship, which is marriage, and try to divide it, because if you can get that, a lot of times that kind of is the crux for so much of a man's walk with the Lord.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Especially, I mean, look at marriage rates, right? It was like 15, 20% divorce rates in like the 90s, and now we're up to 50%. It's like, yeah, people suck at marriage now. So it's an intense title, but I think there's an accuracy to it because people just generally suck at being with other people nowadays.
It is. It's crazy. And, a lot of, for young men, really, most marriages, if they're going to break up, happen within the first 7 years. I think it's like 92% of all marriages that do get divorced, they happen within that 7 years. And that's because I think there's a lot of tools that guys are missing. And that's really the whole concept of the book. As much as I thought, I could write this kind of for couples, I didn't. I chose to write it for guys because I wanted, truly, I wanted it to be kind of for guys to take the onus of that, to take the responsibility and say, okay, here's my part in the marriage. Here's where what my role is. And my role, by the way, is many times can become very evolution. There's a lot of evolution to that, but the responsibility and the idea, like, dude, I'm going to take my part of this very seriously, obviously before the Lord, look at it as something that needs to be sown into every single day.
Yeah, and I think that's important too because, like, look at the rates of how many women are filing divorce. It's like 60 to 70%.
It's crazy.
Divorce rates are because women are filing. It's because they're unhappy in the relationship because men are faltering or falling short of being the man that they're supposed to be.
And I think that's what I meant about the evolution. Like the concept of this book within all the chapters is like, this is a living, growing organism. I mean, so imagine if you plant the seed of something early, right? You're cultivating that seed, that plant differently. I mean, we all have, Luke, I know gardening is a big deal to you. It's big for me. We move our plants based off of where the sun is, during the year as it changes in the seasons, how we fertilize, how we water. Marriage is the same way. It's a living organism.
Yeah, if you choose to neglect it for a day, 2 days, a week, it dies.
It dies.
Yeah.
It dies.
You've written this book. Is it Stop Sucking or Quit Sucking?
It's Stop Sucking at Marriage.
Stop Sucking.
It's kind of like, hey, stop.
Yeah. I like the title, but it's tongue in cheek. Like, I think a lot of the times though, like, especially for my own self, like sometimes when I go across like bookstores and stuff like that, the title of the book either is going to draw you or it's going to push you away. I know you've put a ton of thought into the title of this book, and I was just wondering, like, what's the whole reason? Like, what do you think is going to draw people in to this, obviously, this title, but more importantly, like the content and what it stands for in your book?
Yeah, I think the title of the book is definitely, it can be off-putting, right? It can be kind of in your face. But I think, there's that quote, I think, from Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step in getting better is acknowledging that there's a problem. So the goal of this, if someone looks at the book title, Stop Sucking at Marriage, who, me? Like, that's the whole concept. Like, dude, for you to even begin on the path of like reclaiming joy within your home, you got to recognize, like, dude, there's some things I'm doing wrong. You know what I mean? And so as I don't want it to be condescending, I don't want it to be defeating to anybody, but what I do want is to kind of slap them in the face and go, okay, yeah, well, there's this arena, whether it's, financial, whether it's, communicative, whether it's their view of God, whether it's their sex life, whatever it is, there's areas of a marriage where we're off. I would say even us three, we've been married a while here in this room, but there's areas where I can improve, and I've got to stop sucking at that and own that. As soon as I own that, I'm on the way to recovery, so to speak.
And I think, obviously, like with that hard-hitting title, I'm just looking at it as this. Like, I think like a lot of the guys, though, I think it's like we have a hard time, I think, recognizing it. So I love that you said, like, hey, here's the idea is like, hey, we have to admit that there's a problem. And a lot of like guys, like, they don't go out to it. Like, have you ever thought about like, what happens when a wife throws this down on a husband's table and was like, hey, I want you to read this, and the title says Quit Sucking at Marriage? Like what happens on the date? Because it's like a lot of the times, like, not necessarily that women are more passive aggressive on these things or anything like that, but like we've been given books, we've been given these things, and like I know for me, Luke, we've had these conversations when we get like presents or different things. You get something and you're like, oh, like with my ex-wife was, hey, Merry Christmas. The only thing I got for Christmas for my ex was a beard shaver, like a kit, that like would catch my beard shavings. And it was like, this isn't for me.
Sure.
This is for you. But obviously with the title, with the book, I think the idea is like, we do have to work on ourselves. We do have to kind of facilitate it. And what you're doing is just bringing awareness to those areas that we can then acknowledge. And then you give, I would assume, solutions or things to work through, how to problem solve, how to kind of negotiate those things within ourselves that we can then improve our marriages with our spouse.
Totally. Yeah. The key of the whole book, man, is it's going to flow off of some basic core principles that not only I've lived by, but I've walked other couples through for the last 20 years of my life. So for me, and again, but the onus is on the guy. And that's the concept. I mean, it takes two to tango. Obviously, there's so many relationships. I mean, this is not a magic sprinkling powder. You read this book, the next thing you know, you guys are walking in perfect harmony. But the key is, again, is what I'm hopeful for is that every man at the end of the day can go to sleep at night going, dude, I actually did everything I could to invest in this the appropriate way, the godly way, and the way that gives it the best chance. But like I said, it's not a magic. It's not magic, right? Obviously, it takes the wife to be able to be part of it and to wanting to work and flexible and really, in a lot of ways, man, guys, obviously forgiving. Because what happens, and Luke, you said it, you neglect the plant. That's probably one of the bigger things. When you neglect that plant for such a long time, it's hard to get that back. So there's a lot, my old pastor, Jim Cornwall, used to say, you look at relationships like deposits and withdrawals. However, you can put 15 deposits in of your paycheck, and then your air conditioning goes out, and in one withdrawal, all those deposits that you've been making. So there's there's damage that's done within marriage on a constant basis. And so, my hope is that these tools that are in this book will give these men, okay, like I said, the best shot at it.
Or like that. And I think like a lot of the times, like we just don't, whenever I read a book, I end up looking at it and saying like, okay, what's something I didn't know before I walked into it? And I think with your experience, you've pastored a church before, you've dealt with hundreds probably of marriages in counseling, and from all different walks of life. So it's not like we're just coming in there and saying like, oh, you're just self-evaluating your own marriage, which is highly successful. You've got an amazing wife who runs a business. You have 2 amazing kids. And then that's it. Like, oh, this is picturesque. And if you just follow me, this is what it's going to be. You have experience working with hundreds of marriages and kind of going into that. Now, with the evolution of marriage, like, where are you at on like roles, like man roles, women's roles? Like, are you on the biblical side of things? Because I work in an all boys Jewish school and they are very strict about this is a woman's role. And, I think living in the modern world, things are a little bit different. So where are you on that issue?
Yeah, I think that's that is the quintessential question, right? Because in the current world where we live, again, that word evolves come up a few times in our conversation here. So if we're locked into a prideful way of like, hey, here's how my dad did it, my grandfather did it, and this is how Abraham did it, and you're in the kitchen and I'm here, we're going nowhere with that. And we're not going nowhere with that simply because we live in the 21st century. We're going nowhere in that because I believe with that mentality of here's the ironclad role of what life is going to be like, then what ends up happening is there's a high sense of pride that comes with that. So here's what I bring to the marriage, and I have no ability to flex and add to it. Because you know what? This is the roles that we committed to. Well, the truth is again, this is evolving. You talk to anybody who's ever gone through any type of illness, anybody that's gone through any type of grief or loss of a loved one, man, the roles switch, right? The roles switch. Well, the woman's supposed to be the nurturer. Well, what happens when you're out and man, this just happened to a buddy of mine the other day, was hiking with his dog, up on the top of the mountain. And we know this buddy, and the dog died. Well, he was absolutely devastated by that. The roles switch. Everyone goes through these different vacillations of seasons, and so for me, I'm big about that. Chris, you mentioned something about like, hey, we don't want to just look at this from your marriage. Although I will say that is absolutely true. I think I have a unique marriage enough, and there's some unique perspectives because I am married to someone who's highly successful, who's in the business world, who's talking with CEOs on a daily day-to-day basis. And so, we're in this constant ebb and flow of understanding, and roles change all the time within our home, and I want to promote that. I want to promote the heart of it, if that makes sense. I don't necessarily want to promote the idea that, hey, this is how you're going to go out about it. It's going to be that way for the next 25 years. It's like, no, what's the heart of this? The heart of every man in a marriage truly should be, how can I elevate? How can I serve my wife? Not so that I can get something back, but so that I can have our marriage be something that is being shaped and molded into really what God wants, which is unity.
Yeah, I think you brought up some cool points too. I mean, I think the relationship it's seasonality too, right? Nothing's the same day to day, month to month, year to year, every 5 years. Like, it seems like personalities just tend to shift and change. But you kind of have to go with that flow too, that is seasonality of like, you don't have to stay in this position forever, And I think too, for men, especially because we're told like we're supposed to be these big, strong flexors of making money and going out in the business world. And the reality is how do you shut that off when you come home? Like, if you're in that place, and I was in that place for a long time of like, hey, nobody's going to know unless you're on the cover of a magazine. Nobody's going to care unless everybody knows your name. And now I had to come home and go, okay, now I have to make dinner and I have to do dishes. Like, that's not my place. No, well, it is my place because I have a gift of being able to cook food for my family. So that's my place in the marriage of like, hey, this is your gifting. It might not be your wife's gifting, but you have to step up into that spot, even though society's telling you the opposite.
Yeah, and you know, I don't want to get down to, I don't know how long we can vibe on this for a second, but you know, a lot of times what we see in those roles, Luke, when they're cast so hardcore, is that there's no flexibility. So if something's not flexing, imagine gears, right? If they're not flexing, you know, to match one another, you're going to have a breakdown. And so, hey, this is the only thing I do. That's the only thing you do. Okay. And then what happens when something hits the fan? What happens when someone loses a job? That's the key to this. It's like really what we want to do. And that's why the Bible talked about and why the Lord said, hey, she is your helpmate. You are her helpmate. Helpmate for what? You're a helpmate for one commonality, which is to thrive and to live. I think without being like, you know, these catchphrases, but to live like victoriously together, right? You're together, you're one. And so we never want, but the minute we stop being flexible is the minute we lose the best chance to be one.
Okay. So I'm going to take this back here for a second, because I think like a lot of the things that you just mentioned there, I think a lot of the things that I think a lot of young people, when they're like first starting to date, like don't ask these types of questions. Like, no, the one thing that I'm super fortunate about is my wife, before we had gotten married, like we had gotten like a whole bunch of question books that we had like gone over like future scenarios that you never like think about. So like, how do you encourage somebody, or what would you advise somebody on, like, hey, like what are the conversations that you need to have before you get married? Like when somebody's trying to think about like, hey, is this person the one for me? And what are the types of things that they should be asking, you know, questions? Because I think like these roles need to be discussed. I think these ideas need to be shared, because you're two becoming one. And if you're divided on those so significantly on what someone's role is, and then they're unwilling to change, because I think like a man's heart needs to be evolving and ever changing. I think it's like the idea of repentance, right? The repentance in Greek is to change one's heart, one's mind, and one's direction. And so it's not just like, hey, I'm sorry. It's, hey, I'm sorry. Let me work on the thought process behind it. Let me work on what I believe about it. And then I'm going to do the actions or the steps to go in that direction. So how would you advise somebody, or talking through somebody who's young, who's now starting to think like, hey, this girl might be the one? What are the things that they need to do or think about from your perspective? And is there anything in your book?
Yeah, no, that the last chapter is how do you know she's the one, which is kind of cool. And so I love the question. First off, I'll just say love's not enough.
I'd agree with
that. Love's not enough, right? So we have to be not just more pragmatic about it, but we have to be a little bit more intentional, you know. So, you know, what I advise, and I'm trying to get a catchphrase here on this my own self, but I'm starting to call it, what's your beach chair? What's your beach chair? You know, and I'll do a quick story here. When I met my wife was back in 2002, 2003. Our early part of, I mean, we had no money, zero. You know, she hired me. I was a server. You guys know the story. I don't need to, you know, revamp that. But the thing that bonded us together, sounds crazy enough, is that we spent all the time from April to October, every day before work, truly every day, you know, on a beach together, because we lived in a beach town and we just both love that. So what I mean by that is now we're 40, I'm 43, she's 40, you know, 45 years old. And we're going away this weekend. We're going away this weekend to a beach. So on a year's time, we're trying to find where it's our beach chair, meaning this. So when you're saying, what's the one? Our common vision for life is not just raise a great family. That's too broad. It's not, our common vision for life is be happy. That's too broad. It needs to be a lot more refined. And for us, it's what's the next beach chair? So we are constantly saving, planning. Hey, for me, it works how I take care of my body, right? So everything kind of flows off this vision. So it's like, we're wanting we're looking at another car, you know, our car's got some problems. If we buy this car now, we don't get our beach chair in the spring. right?
Payments.
Exactly. So it sounds silly. That's a very, that's very focused, but it could be travel. I know couples that they're built off of travel. I know couples that are built off of both of them. Man, they just want to save money. That's their whole thing. So what happens in that when you're saying who's the one, you got to make sure, yeah, of course you want her to look a certain way. Yeah, you want her to have good family background. You want her to have, connectivity with your view of God, obviously physical, all these different things. Those are all great foundations. But what I would say is first off, what's your guys' true north? Is it matched up? If you're absolutely hell-bent, you have a core value of, man, I love to save money. I want to put money in my 401k. I want to go X, Y, Z so that this is when I want to retire at 60 years old. And she doesn't want that. That's an issue. That's an unchangeable. That's the way that she was brought up or you were brought up, right? Your vision, your beach chair is not the same. For us, we're not saying constantly every day, hey, we want to make sure we put X amount of dollars away so that we, can retire by this time. No, we want to experience life on a beach 3 or 4 times a year, and we're always talking about it. Does that make sense? So it's like when you're getting down to that, she's passed the personality test, if you, so to speak. She loves the Lord the way that you love the Lord. You got all these different things, but is your vision, is your true north, what's your beach chair? Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah. What's the core? What's the core of that person? What are they striving for in life? What do they want out of life? Yeah.
You gotta be connected on that in some way.
Well, I think the connection portion of it is, that, and I would even say like, that even evolves, that even changes. With me and my wife, there was a lot more where, I've had to go in different directions. I think my wife and I are perfect opposites in that regard, especially just around savings, because me, I'll save every penny that I possibly can. I'll eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every single day for lunch if it means that in 3 months or 4 months, I'm going on a cruise ship and I know I'm going to have every single meal at my hand. But with my wife, she's like, oh, let's go out, and we go out to dinner. There's like the appetizers and things. And like, at first it was just like, I didn't come from a family that did all those things. So at first I was just like, oh, you're taking away from the other things. But then at the exact same time, I saw how much joy it brought her to like be able to go out to dinner and to like have those times. And so it's like, I had to release some of those like, hey, not you're taking away from our future travels, but to think like, hey, this is a vacation right now. Like we went out with our friends this past weekend and we went shooting. And I went the entire day like thinking about how much every single bullet costs and how many things went. And it kind of like took a little bit of the joy. And I had to stop myself and I go, hey, I'm going to fire as many rounds as I possibly want because I'm on vacation right now. I'm with my friends. I'm enjoying the day. We went out to dinner. We went over to Dylan's on the beach at Lake Pleasant, which is just an amazing restaurant. We had such a good time. We ordered drinks. And at the end of the day, like the bill came around, it was over $100 because you can't not spend $100 on all these things. And I was so happy to spend that money because I was like, I'm on vacation. I was doing something with my wife. My wife shot shotguns for the very first time. She shot her first clays. She's blowing these things up. She just like her smile on her face. And I was just like, man, it was worth I did the math in my head, obviously. It was like over $250 of ammo, rifles, guns, all that fun stuff. And I was just like, that was a great vacation. That was a great way to spend time because now my wife and I have an amazing kind of
memory. Yeah. And that's a credit to you, right? Because you took the time to flex. And I think you should be, and I bet she appreciated that, that you took the time to be fluid enough to go, okay, and again, guys, like that, the question was first asked, how do you know she's the one? Okay, we talked about that vision, your beach chair, but then we kind of moved in again back to what we've been talking about since the minute we started this, which is the idea of like, hey, I'm taking on the onus on myself to be the one that'll change. I love this woman enough to go like, where can I humble myself and walk differently so that I might honor her? Does that make sense? And that's what you did, it sounds like to me.
Yeah. So let me be the pessimist because I always love being the negative Nancy.
Nancy, come on in, Luke. Why don't you just tell me how to be
because
sad about.
Because here's the other reality of that too, right? So what if, Chris, you went and did all those stuff, and then you didn't have that idea of looking at her and seeing the smile, and it was the negative thought of, man, we just went and did all this, and then she didn't have fun. What if that was the case? I mean, Justin, can you maybe even put that 2 senses of, right? Because the guy is doing this for a change in his own marriage and putting that work out, but then what is going to happen now if his wife is choosing to neglect this and fight against this and being negative, that maybe these changes are happy for her or whatever it may be, of like, he's putting in all this work and he's not seeing the fruit of his own labor being put out.
Luke, wow, what a question, man. You know,
Sorry.
No,
I know.
As soon as you said that, dude, I literally was like thinking about my ex, and like when things went really bad, I was like, okay, so we need to have more experiences. We went skydiving, you know, to this things, and then the whole time it was just like miserable, and it was like pulling teeth almost. And so, no, I like that question.
Well, because I know personally, man, because that's something I struggle with early on in the marriage. It's more of that conditional love, right? Of that aspect of like, I did the dishes today, I did this, I cleaned the yard. There should be a reward at the end of this tunnel for me, and there's not today. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, guys, listen. I mean, you know, I think the 3rd chapter really handles this. The 3rd chapter is a lot about scorekeeping. It's an impossibility to live as Christ would within your marriage when you scorekeep. Hey, this is what I've done. Now this is what the payment of this should be. Okay. Hey, you know what? She's up with the baby. I was up with the baby last night for 5 hours. Now today she should give me 6 hours of sleep extra. We're again, that's not the concept of helpmate. So specifically to your point, Luke, I think it's an awesome question. You know, so much of someone's instantaneous reaction is built off of what? Something is not built off of the moment. It's built off the history of the marriage. So let's say, like you said, hey, he does all these different things and now she's not having fun. Well, she could not have fun for various reasons. It could have been colder. It could have been, you know, whatever you want to name. I mean, maybe she just wasn't feeling good. But what I go back to, and the whole point of this, that's the reason why this book was written to men, is, did you respond? Did you act righteously in that moment? So here's the deal. I believe this. I think both of you guys believe this as well. You put good seed in the ground, you're going to ultimately get that proper fruit, right? What does the Bible say in Galatians, right? Chapter 6. Hey, let's not grow weary in doing good, because what? At the proper time, we shall reap a harvest if we don't give up. You know, again, deposits withdraws. You know, all right, hey, I did this, and man, I was totally flexible. I didn't mention money the whole time. I didn't do this. I did this. I rubbed her feet this, and she just, nothing's helping. Well, like, okay, well, then the next day do it again, and the next day do it again, and the next day. But here's the thing. Don't do it for the reason of the reward. Do it because sowing into her is exactly how Christ would love her. Does that make sense? It's taking that onus, you know, and don't get me wrong, man. I've talked to many men who are going, hey, Jay, I've done this for 3 years. I've done this for 5 years. I've done 8 years of just serving. I don't see any fruit. And what I would say to that is, can you look in yourself in the mirror and are you proud of yourself? Are you proud of the love that you've sown? And if you can, that's important. And what I would ask is, have you been creative? Are you loving the way that you know how? Or are you loving specifically towards her? But Luke, I think it's a great question. I don't know if there's a perfect answer for it.
I mean, I think there is a good answer, right? If Amazon Prime has a 2-day shipping, like, why can't my wife have a 2-day shipping?
Ooh.
Or why can't I pay extra and get the same day? You know what I'm saying?
I encourage you to lead with that, buddy.
So remember, sometimes humor, we can all enjoy it, but do you ever have those like intrusive thoughts, like when you're in like the argument of this and you're going through it, and then that like comes in? I have to like bite my tongue so many times.
Well, I blame Amazon for all relationship issues, right? Because people overspending on Amazon, us expecting to get Amazon that same day, and then it gets delayed, and it's like, oh, we'll be here by tomorrow at 10 p.m., which I'm dealing with right now.
Well, okay, so we're on the Amazon things. Obviously, it's like you can order whatever you want. You can get it fast, get it now. I want some takeaways. I want some things that, you know, for anyone who's going to be listening to this, like, what are the things that they can do better in their life today? Like, what would be some things, some I don't know, you can talk about different chapters of the book.
Sure.
We've already talked about chapter 3.
Yeah,
I don't even know.
But I want tips for like a couple single guys and then a couple married, if you could do that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, I think for, let's go single guy first. I think one of the things that I would ask every single guy to do right off the bat is to always just commit for the rest of your life to giving your wife or your girlfriend the benefit of the doubt. I think it's one of the most valuable tools that I can see that a man could have, because when we start to judge our wife's intent of why they did what they did, we go down a road of deep, dark resentment. And so if your wife has even done something that really bothers you 20 times in a row, unless she's specifically looked at you and said, I'm doing this to piss you off, what would happen if you gave them the benefit of the doubt? You know, we look at one of the greatest examples of that in Scripture, right? Jesus is hanging on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they what? No, don't know what they do. What the heck? They totally knew what they did, but they didn't, right? So if those ardent Jewish people knew that they were absolutely slapping the face of their Jehovah, right? Their king, right? Because that's God's son, then yeah, that would have, but they didn't understand the intent. They didn't have that intention. They just had somebody that threatened their way of life, right? So when we look at something that's our wife is doing or our girlfriend, and we go, you meant to do that. That's deep. That's deep. It's hard to come back from, because you start to spin and you give really, I believe, a foothold to all kinds of different thoughts. So I would challenge every man that's in a relationship with a woman, or for that matter with your children or anyone. Hey, let's stop judging the intent, because judging the intent just creates this unbelievable space of darkness.
Yeah, I was always taught that it's like we judge ourselves by our intentions and we judge others by their actions.
That's beautiful.
And so it was like, okay, so, you know, I intended to do all these, but my actions might have been completely different. Whereas we'll only see somebody's actions because we don't actually understand their intention. So I love the advice of like, hey, get to the intention, you know, like, hey, let them know like, hey, this hurt or whatever. But what did you mean by that? Because a lot of times, hopefully, if they love you, they'll be like, no, I didn't mean to hurt you.
Totally.
But then I will also say, knowing my experience, someone used an action to cause the greatest amount of pain, and was intent, and that person had literally told me, hey, I did this so that you would do this.
Right, and that's another scenario,
right?
You know what I mean, where you can, you know, now you've got other steps. Right. You know, if someone's absolutely trying to stab you in the back or something like that, and that, by the way, that's a dating relationship. I would highly recommend you leaving that dating relationship if someone's intentionally trying to hurt you. Yeah. But at the beginning, we've got to really be careful with that. You know, we've got to be really careful of understanding that leads to a negative thoughts that actually breed so much other stuff. Yeah. So,
okay. So that's for your single guys in the dating. What about us? We're at 2 different stages.
Yeah.
3 kids, no kids.
14 years of marriage. 14
years of marriage.
Yeah, I got one for you guys. Maybe you probably already do this. Both of you guys are pretty wise. How about the simple 5-minute rule?
Okay. What's that?
5-minute rule. Easy, right? 5 minutes before you leave the house in the morning, 5 minutes after you get home in the afternoon or whenever, you propose the idea of never bringing up anything controversial or pressurized in those first 5 minutes. I've noticed with guys, it takes time as they're prepping for their day. Heck, this morning it happened to me. I broke my own rule, right? Because I had so much going on. I lost my iPad, and then the next thing you know, I'm saying something I don't mean that's controversial. Why? Because I'm frustrated, because I was running a few minutes late. So there's always these pressurized moments, 5 minutes, 10 minutes before you leave, 5 to 10 minutes after you get that. It's like a no-fly zone. Like, we're just the no-fly zone. don't bring up anything that is going to be critical or that's going to be instructional in those last minutes before or after you get home. It's a simple thing, but it really provides space for everybody to breathe, to welcome, to get a hug, to do whatever it is. So I always live by that rule. When I say I always live by it, I obviously don't, because I just...
But obviously, when you break the rule, the consequences of it. So you see that, like, the actual implication of it can have profound impact, because it's like, okay, how many times when we walk into the door on both sides. I think this is a good advice for just husbands and wives, but I think it's a good thing for the husbands to lead in this and just say, like, hey, in the first 5 minutes, let's not bring anything up to where it's just like, hey, when you walk in the door, don't tell me I need to go take out the trash, I need to go grab the kids, I need to go do anything. Here's the embrace. And then on our end, if we're coming home or whatever the case may be, we come into the house and we don't bring up anything negative from the work, negative of the job. Like, hey, don't bring anything on me,
Exactly.
Leave me alone. Like, no, let me engage with you. Let me say hi to you. Let me love on you. Because I didn't get that at work and so I like that.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah, I like that too, because it sets the tone for the house for the day. So, like, especially if you're going to work, that sets the tone for what you're going to do at work and how you're going to do at work. And then when you get home, especially I know with our kids, if either one of us is kind of in an off mood, our 3 kids are driving us up the walls because now they're in off moods. So if we don't set that tone of, hey, we're in a good mood, we're happy, we're in a good spot, then all hell breaks loose and the rest of our night is crap.
And Luke, you're hitting it on the head. You said 3 times there, you set the tone. Again, this whole book is about that. Like, we're taking the onus on ourselves to be the one that we're leading in this. Doesn't make us better, doesn't make us more powerful. It makes us responsible to ourselves to stick there and go, I'm going to set the tone so I give myself the best chance to live a harmonious life, which, by the way, every guy wants. Dang, everything flows off of harmony. Everything flows off of that. If you're unified, man, you could have a terrible work week, but if you come home and you know that you've got a relationship that is unified, dude, it changes the dynamic of because otherwise it's hopeless. It's like, dude, everything's being thrown at me at once. And so that little tip there gives the best chance, just practically, not really a concept or a truth behind it. It's just a practical concept.
Yeah, it makes sense and it works.
All right. You gave us 1 nugget. Is there any more?
Man, I gave lots of nuggets. I think I think we got a lot to work on.
Good. And you don't want to save it all because, you want people to go out and buy your book.
Indeed, that's important.
Well, when is the book coming out?
Yeah, so we're in the process right now of kind of getting that content editing. And so then after that it goes to line editing. I actually have a meeting in 2 weeks with a literary agent. So, I'm hopeful. The thing is about this whole thing is I'm not stressed to get it done. But when it does, I'll be sure to let you guys know. And up until that point, hopefully I get on some more podcasts and just keep talking the message.
Yeah. Well, and if people want to get a hold of you, because this is my favorite thing that has happened in the last 2 weeks of my life, is that Justin Hege has gotten on to LinkedIn after 100 years of this old man never stepping foot into social media realm.
Yeah.
I got a notification. It was Justin Hege has joined LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I thought it was fake because there was no picture at first, the original one. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Somebody just hacked this.
All right. Hey, so yeah, I'll be on that. I would say within the next month, I'll be dropping probably daily stuff for guys as well, on some sort of Instagram or TikTok.
So. Whoa.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Yeah. Hey, listen,
You've now
you know who my wife is. Yeah, I mean, she's a sensei when it comes to public relations. So she's taken me on as a client, which, by the way, takes quite a bit of humility just to accept.
That she knows.
Well, now that she has to work with you on a work level too.
Yeah, now we're in trouble. We're going to put this book to test.
Am I going to be editing your videos here in a little bit?
You may very know.
Very cool. All right, so they can get a hold of you on LinkedIn. Do you know what your Instagram and TikTok handles are going to be?
I do not yet. Yeah, that's something that is in the process. We're going to work on that a little bit this weekend. When we're in San Diego, we're going to eat some good food and do our deal there. But we're actually driving to San Diego, so we'll have some time to kind of converse.
Plenty of time.
Yep.
As long as it's not flooded.
That's true.
Because I know they had wicked
Awful
storms, man.
Awful.
Might be clean by now. He might have washed all the filth away,
That's not San Francisco. He's going to San Diego.
Tomato.
It's California.
Oh, no.
It's very different. All right, man. Now we end our podcast telling stories? No. We do fishing stories. We do hunting stories. So
outdoor stories.
Yeah. What do you got for us?
Oh, wow. Well, I think that's a good, you know, you guys know I go to the one every year up in northern New Mexico, outside of Farmington. So, you know, I've done that trip with my dad and a couple, you know, mutual friends that we have every April or May, you know, for the last 15, 18 years. So there's lots of stories there. But I think probably the best one is that, again, fishing is amazing. Fly fishing, especially wet fly fishing, is a different animal altogether. I love dry fly fishing, but in the San Juan River during the spring, you're just not doing that. The flow is just so crazy, and so you know everything is really working with emergers and smaller flies. You know, you're talking like 22s and 24s, and so I imagine a lot of people know this stuff, but one of the things is that there's so much coming up from the bottom there. And so if you move your feet in any way, shape, or form, you know, you're kicking up sediment. And so that river, because of just its popularity, there's a lot of guides on it and there are a lot of purists on it. I would not say I'm either one of those. I would say I'm into catching fish. I'm into just enjoying it. So there is this unspoken rule that you do not fish below your feet. You know, because in theory, if you're moving even a centimeter, you're kicking up some sediment. So about 6 years ago, we were there and, you know, obviously the visibility is amazing. You look down, you're seeing huge browns and rainbow trout just right there. So for me, you know, you've got two flies on there, you got an indicator. I want to catch fish. So for me, I always allow my lures to go, or my flies to go below my feet because that's where the fish are. Well, I was killing it one day, you know, and we were in this like pool area over on Beta's Bend, and this guide decided to roll over to me in his boat, and he goes, "Hey, you know what you are? You're a San Juan shuffler." And I was like, I had no idea what he was talking about. He goes, "Get your," and I can't say it on this, but he said blankly blank feet and start casting above your upstream. And I just looked at him and I just thought, that guy is a sad man, because we're out here to catch fish and I don't know him, nor am I competing against him. So as I was walking out, you know, I just kind of, all right, cool, right? And I can't tell the rest of this story fully, but I'll just say that the guy was so frustrated at me with catching fish that he actually met me in the parking lot. And, you know, I picked up my stuff and I just like, dude, this is way too serious for me. I went back to the cabin and I played some online chess against a buddy in Brazil. But anyway, that's my story, is that be careful of two things. Be careful of the two serious guide, and be careful of the San Juan shuffler.
There's Karens in the water and out of the water.
You dang right, dude.
Yeah. Because you guys weren't like catching and like taking them out. You guys were catch and release,
and
right?
Releasing.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful experience, you know, it's fun, you know. And so like, to me, you know, you're seeing fish all around you. You're wanting to put your fly right on them. So anyway, I don't know if that's a positive story, but it's a dang story that happened to me that was funny to me, because I just was like, dude, this is way too serious. Like, the goal is catching fish, right? And I'm not competing against you, buddy.
Well, there it is.
Cool.
Good story.
There you go.
Now we'll add that to your list of nicknames.
The San Juan Shuffler.
San Juan Shuffler.
Hey.
Well, I'm sure it's coming out soon. Yeah.
Wait, what was the basketball one?
White chocolate, I think, is what.
White chocolate.
White chocolate from your days.
Let's go.
Basketball.
That was about
Which I believe was used as part of a sermon.
20 years ago. 20 years ago.
I mean, we got so many names for you, man. Well, hey, man, I truly just want to thank you. You know, this is your first time on a podcast, kind of promoting this. So
I appreciate it.
Foremost, thanks for coming out to the Field and Faith podcast. You're always welcome. Obviously, when it drops, if you ever want to come back and hang out with us again, we got more topics. I mean,
Absolutely.
You're more knowledgeable just in the ways of marriage, but for those of you, we will keep you up to date on when this drops and how to get a hold of it. We'll probably put links to it on the Field and Faith podcast because
I'm sure we'll have links too when it's for sale, probably on our merch page that'll take you directly to it. Just make it easy.
And man, I love what you guys are doing, man. I love the vision of this ministry, and I know people that are connected with it. What you got going on this weekend. You got the year. This is the year.
1 year celebration. Yeah,
man, it's so exciting, and it's truly amazing to watch. Speaking of evolution, the evolution of you guys and chasing this, and I honor you for following the Lord in faith. You know how big of a deal that is to me, and so watching you guys from far, and not only as someone that was like in ministry with you, but also as a friend, it's really amazing. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah,
loved it. And as always, guys, thanks for joining into us. We hope you guys have a good rest of the day.
Yeah, follow us fieldfaith.org, TikTok, social media, fieldfaith.org. Check us out, donate. We are a nonprofit 501c3. Subscribe and follow. Episodes every other week. Peace out.